Hello, welcome back to Podium Pop. My name is Gracie. I'm here with my co-host Celine, and we are here to recap the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix for Formula One. It was quite the race weekend. The indoor triple header. It's been busy.
Busy.
You can tell people are tired. They're ready for a break, and then we're headed to Miami. We're gonna recap the race, but Miami, 11 days away. Well. Yeah, 11 days away.
Wow. 11 days till we get there?
11 days till FP1. That's what my timer is, goes to FP1.
So 10 days until we get there.
10 days till we get there.
We're almost in the single digits until we leave for Miami. Woo!
And, if you think on our socials we've been talking about Miami a lot, you have not seen.
You are going to get sick of us.
You're going to get sick of
Speaking
us.
of socials.
Follow us on our socials.
Go follow us on social. We're on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
We're on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
We post our episodes on YouTube and on Spotify.
Make sure you're following and subscribing. You guys, I say this every week. Why are you not subscribing and following? And the majority of you aren't, and I just don't get it.
Yeah.
So go ahead and do that, please. Thank you. That'd be, so lovely. Let's go ahead and just pop the bottle and get into today's episode. I think we're going to get right into quali.
Uh-huh.
Let's pop the bottle.
Okay. Awesome. So quali, Q1.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, before we did quali, guys, I had a lovely flight. And it was the best flight of my life. So I was coming back from a work trip, and I had a layover, and then on my second flight, it perfectly lined up with FP2.
That's amazing.
I took off as it was starting, and I landed as it was ending. It was a beautiful, beautiful trip. No one sat next to me.
Oh,
so it was
nice.
like a row of three, and it was me and then another lady, two seats down. So there was no one between us. Amazing. And I just plugged my little headphones in. I went. Delta has this feature where if they don't have the screens in front of you, you can do it on your phone with the Delta Wi-Fi. But if you have the screen in front of you, they have maybe 8 channels that you can watch live. And ESPN and ESPN2 are some of those channels.
Perfect.
So I put it on ESPN2, and I sat there, and I got comfy, and I was watching FP2, and when the lady came around to take my order if I wanted cookies or chips, I said, cookies, please. So and I got a nice water bottle. I was sipping on water. I was eating my cookie, my Delta cookies.
Those are the best.
And I was having the time of my life.
I love that for you.
It was legitimately maybe the best flight I've ever taken.
Wow. Yeah, that's actually so fair.
So, shout out Delta. Thank you. You've been making me mad recently with a lot of canceled flights, and you have fully redeemed yourself, and you're back in my good books.
I'm going to need to get back in my good books, because one of the worst flights I ever had was when I was in air going to Las Vegas for the race. I was supposed to land in Salt Lake City and take my connecting flight, but I got delayed, and I see my flight taking off as I'm in air. Barely. Just barely. They wouldn't wait for me. They wouldn't wait for me. The flight attendant, also as I'm getting off, gave me false hope.
Yeah, that was. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm a little bitter about it. I know I've talked about it before.
It's okay. Yeah. It's fair to be bitter about it.
Thank you.
So, anyways, we can now actually get started.
Oh, yeah.
Qualifying.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. So, qualifying. Q1. First note, Williams was very quick.
Oh,
pretty much all weekend they were really impressive, but in qualifying you really saw that they were keeping up with the big dogs.
With the big dogs.
I mean, not keeping up with them, but they were sticking with them.
They were holding their own.
They were holding their own. Yeah. There were a lot of wall taps during qualifying. We didn't see as much in the race, but during qualifying we had in just Q1 we had Isaac do a wall tap. We had also in one of the practices Yuki had a wall tap and had a crash. And then in qualifying, Isaac had a wall tap. Alex almost tapped the wall. At one point, Pierre scraped up against the wall. It's, and we see this with this track every year.
Yeah, you do.
Because it's so fast paced, especially during quali. And the walls are so close. There's always safety cars. It's kind of what it's known for. But a lot of close calls in Q1.
Did you see, and not to interrupt, did you see somebody edited how Lando and free practice was right behind Yuki when he hit the wall and then hit the barrier. Somebody edited Landos shooting a red shell at Yuki.
Oh, that's funny though.
No, it's only funny because like everybody's okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's funny now looking back at it.
Because they did wait. They did wait to post it.
Okay, good.
I don't know how quick they did the edit, but they waited to post.
Good. We also saw Jack Doohan put a really good lap together at the beginning, and it unfortunately did get deleted out because of impeding, and he ended up not making it through Q1. So the people that were knocked out in Q1 in 20th was Gabby Bortoletto, our boy struggling, bless his heart.
Bless his heart, truly.
In 19th was Esteban, 18th was Hulk, 17th was Jack, and 16th was Lance.
Talk about Lance's new record?
Yeah, go ahead.
Lance has broken the record for the most...
He broke a record!
He broke the record for most Q1 exits in Formula One history.
Which doesn't necessarily just prove that he's not a fantastic driver. I mean, it proves that a little bit, but it more so proves his longevity in the sport.
Yes! He drives.
He drives. And he'll keep driving until he decides not to.
He'll keep driving for sure.
Top 3 in Q1, Max had the fastest time, and then Lando in second, and Oscar in third. Moving to Q2, Williams still are looking really quick. At one point, Hamilton was really close to the drop zone, and it was kind of touch and go there for a second. Eventually, with the Williams, while they're both looking quick, Alex just got knocked out at the last moment by Yuki.
We were like, I was devastated.
You were devastated, yeah. So in Q2, we see in 15th, Ollie eliminated, which means that both Haas are out at this point. In 14th, Isaac eliminated. 13th, Fernando. 12th, Liam. And 11th, Alex. Which means that only one Williams made it to Q3. Only one V-Carb made it to... Or no V-Carbs made it to Q3. And no Aston Martins made it to Q3.
We've got the usuals.
The usual suspects.
Carlos and Pierre.
Yes. Yeah. So in Q2, the top 3 were the same from Q1, except it was Lando had the fastest time, and then Max, and then Oscar. Okay, Q3. Are you ready?
No, I don't want
to. Okay. So in Q3, Oscar put together a really good lap at the very beginning, but right as he was about to finish, I think he was in the middle of his third sector, Lando crashes.
That happened, and we see yellow flag, then bumped to red flag, and they had just shown him back. First of all, I saw yellow flag, and I was like, that was Lando. They didn't show it. They were still on Oscar, and I was like, I feel it in my bones. That was Lando. And then they panned to the back of the car. They hadn't said who it was yet, and I'm like, that's Lando. That is Lando.
Sure enough, her instincts were correct. It was Lando. He bumps the wall, or it doesn't even bump the wall. He hits the curb, and then he loses the rear end, and that causes him to bump into the wall. It wasn't by any means like an aggressive crash, but speeds are so high at this track that even those minor crashes, like the one that Yuki had during practice, are still difficult, and it really does cause a lot of damage to the car. But luckily, he was okay. And it was also kind of a moment of concern because Oscar was putting together such a good lap that I guess is not super important in the long run of things because he eventually puts in a quicker lap than this. But we weren't sure if they were going to count Oscar's lap because he wasn't fully finished with it by the time Lando crashed. But because of the flags and where they were in the track, they did count his lap. Again, not super important in the long run, but
I saw this stat. I very briefly saw it, and I didn't do any more reading into it, so I'm choosing to believe that what this person said was true. Lando hasn't crashed into qualifying since 2021.
Wow.
I know.
Was that Spa?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a nasty one.
That was nasty.
Nasty crash.
Also, if you keep seeing me look down at my phone, there's a chance we'll get some news about the race. Like, we don't know. It's like so up in the air right now.
We're a little on edge.
If every time I'm like waiting for
Christian Horner when I catch you.
Christian Horner.
I mean, I get it. I get why you're doing
truthfully. So if you see me like look at my phone real quick, that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
We'll get into it later though. No spoilers.
So, as most qualifying sessions go in Q3, in the last 2 minutes, we see all of the cars pretty much go out and try to put that last final lap together. Because the goal of qualifying is the later you go in qualifying, the hotter the track is, the better grip your tires will have, the faster your car is going to go. But you want to make sure that you get through your full out lap and over the finish line to start your fast lap before the time hits zero. Yeah. So it's really, but then you line up, and then some people go slower out of the pit exit lane, and that affects it. It gets real dicey sometimes. So all of the cars go out pretty much at once in the last 2 minutes. All the cars but Lando. Sorry, I didn't need to say that part.
He's not even in the garage. He's back there in the crane, the car.
Yeah. So at first, it looks like George takes the pole, takes provisional pole. He sets it, and that was with 0.58 seconds left. But eventually, Oscar comes through, gets the fastest lap, takes pole, and then Max takes pole.
Inevitable.
Away from him. Yeah, Max is inevitable. So our qualifying order is Max in first, Oscar in second, George third, Charles is in fourth, fifth, Kimi, sixth, Carlos, which is his highest qualifying in Williams, Lewis in seventh, Carlos not qualifying Lewis, I'll leave that alone, Yuki in eighth, Pierre in ninth, Lando in 10th, because while he did crash, he did make it through to Q3, so he's just in the lowest possible spot for Q3, which is 10th. And then we have Alex, Liam, Fernando, Isaac, Ollie, Lance, Jack, Nico, Esteban, and then Gabby in 20th. Tire strategy was really important in the race going into it, because it is such a fast pace. You would think there would be really high tire deg, which there actually wasn't. It wasn't horrible as they were expecting, but that is something that they were anticipating. And then also with safety cars, especially during the first lap.
Talk about inevitable.
Yeah, it truly is. Like, the race is, the track is so narrow.
Yeah, and it's so fast.
There's no way, because it's similar, like, it's narrow, similar to Monaco, but Monaco doesn't have the speeds that this track does have, so it always causes a lot of issues. There's always safety cars, mostly in, like, the first couple of laps. So, we get started on the race. Does anything happen in between qualifying and the race that we need to touch on?
I don't think so.
Okay, perfect. So, if you want to kind of take the first couple laps?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was at Easter brunch when this was happening. I got to watch the first, like, opening, and then had to go to brunch, and I kept up with the rest of the race. My family was like, well, actually, they know. They literally know all about the podcast, and they were like, what's going on? And I was like, oh, there's a race on. And they were like, yeah, okay. Okay, so in the opening lap, we see Max and Oscar at the lead. Max... this is what the whole debate is kind of right now, and it happened a bit during the race, of going into turn one, who's ahead at the apex, because as I got there, Max technically overtakes off track, like all four wheels off track.
Yeah, Max is saying that he was pushed off track by Oscar. Oscar is saying that he had the racing line because he was ahead at the apex. Regardless, after the incident happened, Max was all four tires off of the track, and Max ended up after that corner being in the lead.
And then because of that, Max gets a 5-second penalty
later in the track.
How long did it take?
It took a while. So the biggest issue that happened is, typically in a situation like this, if a team notices that happening, they would say, "Hey, Max, give the position back." Otherwise, you risk a 5-second penalty, or in most cases, a 10-second penalty. They're a little bit more lenient on the first couple, especially the first lap, especially one of the first turns. But typically, you'd say, okay, give the position back. One, I think Red Bull's a little scared of Max. That's why they didn't say it. But also because he didn't even really get an opportunity to give the position back, because right after it happened, there was a crash on track farther back, between Pierre and Yuki. Oh my gosh, I got distracted. Pierre and Yuki. And that caused the safety car to come out.
Yeah.
So even if he wanted to give the position back, he would have had to wait until after the safety car, and that would have caused a lot of issues as well. So he was kind of like risking that the FAA would not give him a penalty for that incident.
We'll see what happens. That's why I'm keeping an extra eye on my phone. But yeah, so that happens, and then like immediately after that happens, Pierre and Yuki do collide. Yuki made it back to the pits, but Pierre didn't, right?
Pierre did not make it back. Yuki did make it back. They looked
for a second. They were like,
looked at the car, and they're like, we're gonna see. And eventually, they were not able to repair the car. To get him back on track. it was a racing incident. There was no fault found for the crash. In fact, both of them in post-race interviews both refused to blame the other, which is like so. It's just so on brand for them.
It is so on brand. If any two drivers would, it would be them.
No, it was so funny. Like that happened. I was like, oh no,
oh
no. So Max does eventually get the 5-second penalty in lap 4 after the restart.
Okay.
So the restart happens and it's very stressful because basically whenever the green flag comes out, it's up to the race leader to decide like when to go to full throttle, basically.
And Max is never gonna let you know his next move with that. Sometimes he'll bolt, sometimes he'll go slow. You can never predict what Max is gonna do with this.
Yeah, and it's always important like to be strategic about where you're doing it because you'd want it like some people. It makes more sense to do it on certain turns, sometimes before the apex, before the turn, all of that. There's so many things. So he does do the restart, but he waits quite a while to actually start, and it causes like a lot of issues. Like at one point, George is almost like running into like the back of Oscar because they're all like antsy now at this point, ready to go. Max does do the restart. He keeps the lead. He gets a good chunk, but Oscar struggled a bit with this restart. He took a while, and it almost caused an issue for him because George was right up next to him. George did have a good restart. And George almost overtook Oscar for P2 in that moment, which would have caused him a lot of issues later down the line.
I believe Oscar would have been able to pass him for sure, but
it would have. We
didn't need it,
right?
Yeah, that's not what we would have needed. Let's address the elephant in the room first.
Our camera died, so we moved to a different camera. So if that angle changed, that's why.
If it looks different quality, I'm looking a little more pale with this camera. You guys don't look at me.
It's fine. So when GP delivers the news to Max, he basically tells him in a way that like, I don't know if they got a warning before the race or maybe the last race or when the initial warning came out, but he basically said, hey Max, here's this penalty. Before Max can even start, popping off about it, GP's like, but we don't need to comment on it. No need, blah, blah, blah. But like Max talks over him anyways and does say, well, isn't that effing lovely? Which is a little kind of play on words because of his quote, simply lovely, that he always uses.
Yes.
So he says, isn't that effing lovely? Which like, okay, love that. I'm
going to start using that.
Isn't that lovely?
Lovely.
Yeah.
That's kind of good.
But so that all happens in like lap 4, lap 5. Lando also did really good on the initial start and during the restart. He is at this point up to 8th from 10th. And Isaac is up to 10th from, I believe, 14th is where he qualified. Yes. So Isaac's having a great race as well. In lap 8, Lando does overtake Carlos, so he's up to 7th. And also around that time, Alex is getting spicy on the radio once again.
What was he saying? Like, what was happening?
I don't remember.
Oh, word.
But he was getting spicy. Like the engineer told him something. Oh, I remember now. The engineer basically said, because he was right behind Carlos, and the engineer basically was like, "Hey, Alex, like just so you know, the dirty air in front of you is affecting your car. Like maybe like pull back a little bit so that it's not affecting you." And Alex was like, do you also realize that there's like a car on my ass right now? Like,
who? Oh, George one time said that too.
I don't think he actually used those words. I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but that's like his how he felt, like how he was feeling, like his vibe, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, he was like, yeah, well, there's also like a car on my ass. So like, what do you expect me to do? And no response after that, or at least not a broadcasted one. But everyone is talking. I saw like some tweets me like, has Alex always been like this on the race radio? And it's like, no, but he also was specifically told to be less nice during races, and like he took that to heart.
He took it to heart. He said, I will say what I'm thinking.
And I love that. I truly do think that it's making a difference. And he's not being walked over. Not that I think they were walking over him, but like I think that he's being more competitive, and it's good to see.
Yeah.
In lap 12, we start to see Lando battling with Lewis. So, do you want to explain this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this was the last corner before the straight going in.
Correct.
Okay. So, Lando and Lewis are battling, and as they're going in, Lewis is in front, Lando's behind. I'm talking with my hand with my mic in it.
It's okay.
Made me giggle. And so, at the turn. Lewis is basically... Lando gets ahead of Lewis, and then Lewis knows because DRS happens right after this turn that Lewis is like, well, I can go get it back again. And this happened for two laps in a row.
And it really shows Lewis, like, his experience.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
He knows, like, if I basically slow down, and at one point, the first time he slows down, and Lando's like, whoop, don't mind if I do, let me get around him. And then, obviously, right after the turn happens, he gets DRS, he overpasses him very, very quickly.
Yeah.
The first time that happens. The second time it happens, Lando's almost forced into it because Lewis slows down so quickly. Lando has to either get around him and take the lead in front of him or literally crash into the back of him.
Yeah.
So he didn't really have a choice, but it's still the exact same thing happened. Lewis went in front of him.
Will comes over the radio and was like, hey mate, let's try this.
Have you ever tried this one?
Have you ever tried this one?
And then eventually he does get that from Lewis and keeps it in lap 15.
Perfect.
So now we have Lewis in 6th and Lando in 6th, and Lando is right behind Kimi. In lap 20, we see Oscar do his first pit stop. And this is really important because basically Oscar and Max were kind of holding out to see who would do a pit stop first because Max was wanting to build as big of a gap as possible from Oscar because he knew he had to serve that 5-second penalty on his next pit stop. So Oscar, in return, was trying to keep up with Max as much as possible, and they had to be strategic on how far can I push it until I'm losing too much time and I need to get new tires. So Oscar does go into pit before Max, and he puts on new tires. It's a bit of a slow pit stop for them, 3.4 seconds.
Not our usual speed.
Not a usual speed, and really not the time to be messing around.
Nah.
It's not the worst thing ever. No sticky nuts or anything.
No sticky nuts.
But it was still scary. So Oscar does eventually come out of the pits, and he's now behind Lewis in the standings there. And then he has the most beautiful overtake.
Gorgeous.
Ever. It was on lap 21. And he overtakes Lewis in a very, like, unconventional part of the track. Like, there's a couple zones that, like, mostly that is where people are overtaking. He does it on a place that you typically wouldn't even risk doing it. There's a lot of dust and debris and dirty air, that kind of thing. It's beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
My opinion, best overtake of the whole race.
Absolutely. He keeps doing them against Lewis, too.
Poor Lewis. Lewis, like, get this guy out of here.
Oscar for overtake of the month. Or again.
Yes. Yeah. And then eventually Max, right after that, goes right around that same moment, goes into pit. He serves his 5-second penalty. And then he also comes out behind Lewis. He struggles a bit more to get around Lewis than Oscar did, which, like, thanks Lewis for holding him up. Even
we talked about this, how, like, the commentators like, ooh, you think Max is going to make this move? And I forget who, I think it was DC maybe, it was like, no, that's not that Max wouldn't be comfortable doing that. Obviously, we've seen the moves Max can make, but, like, Max is going to wait for a good, comfortable spot to overtake it, be clean and easy. And that's just, like, shows the type of driver Oscar is.
Yeah.
And there has never been a doubt in my mind that Oscar will win a WDC, but this is just, like...
This race really showed, like, he's hungry for it. He's got the skill level for it. He's competitive. I think it was really good.
Slightly, not that was scrappy, because it wasn't, but, like, slightly scrappy.
He's also just younger, and he's like, fuck it, let's do it, you know?
He's in his fuck it, we ball era.
No, he is.
Well, he really is.
He is.
Yeah.
So because of that, though, there's less conventional overtaking moments like on the track. So Max ends up behind Lewis a little bit longer than he was probably hoping, and eventually does get around him, but it takes a bit. In lap 25, Alonso and Gabby have a bit of a moment, which is it is Gabby's fault. When basically what happened was Gabby just didn't see Fernando there. Fernando was trying to overtake him. Gabby didn't see it, so he basically runs him off track if there was another place for him to go, but there wasn't because there was a wall. Luckily, Fernando's instincts and experience, it was fine. But you could tell that it was not intentional. They talk about it after the race. It was fine. There were no issues.
There's jokes.
Even in the cool-down room, there was a comment made by Oscar where he was like, oh, guess Gabby's going to need to find a new flight home. Like, It was fine. But it was a really close moment. And at that point that happened, it would have been really, if there was something that caused a safety car, that could have changed the race outcome completely. Because at this point, we had Charles in the lead, and then right behind him was Lando.
Neither had pit.
Neither of them had pit. So if there was a safety car, it would basically equalize. They'd be able to get new tires, fresh tires, and it would essentially cause the opportunity for Charles to win the race.
Miami 2024 vibes.
Yes. So a couple laps after that, Charles finally pits. He finally takes off his mediums. He's the longest one, like the one that went longest on the medium tires.
He's not that he's ever been like bad, I would say, but like I feel like this year and we've seen it in like years like past two, he's getting good.
Yeah.
Getting very, and it is very good at the tires.
It's so interesting too because like Charles and Lewis, they have a lot of not great things to say about the Ferrari car right now. But in the interview after the race, they're like, Charles, was that hard for you to go that long on your mediums? He was like, actually, no, that the car did great. Like the car did great with that. So that's helpful for Ferrari fans. But Charles finally pits on mediums. And then at this point, everybody else that hasn't pit are started on hards, including Lando, who's now leading the race. At this point, a safety car would have been pretty convenient for McLaren because at this point it was Lando, Oscar, and then Max. And the same thing would have happened. It would have equalized if they would have been able to pit. And then it would have had potential for Lando to win the race, which would have been interesting to see how the strategy would have played out with McLaren. I'm almost glad it didn't happen.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that, which...
I don't need a
total side note, McLaren did fantastic with strategy this weekend.
Yeah.
And they made some tough calls that had to be made. But it's fine. Eventually, right before Lando pits, it was there was radio messages going back and forth. And Oscar did say that the dirty air from Lando was affecting his race a bit. And they did have to strategize that. Okay, if the longer they keep Lando out, the closer Max is going to get to Oscar. Lando's going to have to pit inevitably. Yeah. He is not going to be in the lead unless the safety car happens to happen. Like, the only way that keeping Lando out longer would have saved anything is if a safety car were to happen.
They were just hoping that strategy worked for them.
Right. And, like, safety cars are so much, specifically, I don't know why this number sticks out to them, but the commentators are talking about how, like, it's so less likely for the safety car at this track to come up after lap 20.
Yeah. That's a kind of crazy strategy.
Yeah.
Crazy statistic.
Yeah. So, they eventually pit Lando, which does help Oscar kind of have clean air.
It makes the most sense, I'm going to be honest, because Lando's he still needs to pit. Like, he's not going to win the race.
Right. Even if he could have gone the whole way on the tires, in order to not get disqualified, he would have had to pit. So Lando does go into the pit. Oscar leads. Lando comes out in fifth. In lap 38, Charles overtakes George for P3. So now it is Oscar, Max, Charles, George, Lando. That's the top five that we're looking at right now. In lap 39, Liam gets a 10-second penalty for leaving the track to gain position. I don't know the situation. They didn't show it. I didn't see it. I didn't notice it. Interesting. But the reason why go ahead.
This is a little off topic. Not showing and not seeing the how they're showing the race and like directing it has been odd.
Yeah, we've missed a lot of things.
Last year they literally had George and Lando's battle for P2, P3 on the big screen and Oscar coming across the finish line in the picture-in-picture. Why are we having Oscar's going across the finish line to win? Yeah. And then like I get they're close, but the race winner should be the one that's on the big screen.
Yeah. And I get why, because it is difficult. There's definitely more like mid-range battles going on than there were the last couple of years, like especially in 2023. Like, kind of saying there's battles going all over the track. Yeah, so it isn't, difficult to kind of tell. But so Liam gets a 10-second penalty for the exact same thing that Max did, while Max only got a 5-second penalty. That is because the FAA tend to be a little bit more lenient for that first lap, especially one of the first corner turns for this situation, because all of the cars are bunched together. There's inevitably going to be people going off the track. Yeah. So there's always less of a penalty because of that. So that's the difference with why Max got 5 seconds and Liam got 10 seconds. In lap 40, Lando, it comes because whenever Lando pit back in lap 35, lap 40 comes out that he's being investigated for pit lane, like going over a pit lane line. Basically what happened when he was going into the pits, he waited a little bit too long to brake, so he locked up a little bit and he had to kind of like recover and like hold on to it. He pit, everything was fine, he left, everything was fine, nothing to note about it. But because of that, people were thinking maybe because he was being investigated for the pit line, they were like, okay, maybe at pit exit he went over the line, which would have been odd because he wasn't battling anyone at that point. So there was really no, like, for him to do it, it would have been just an honest mistake. It wasn't like he did it to have an advantage at all.
Oh, yeah.
So it turns out later, it comes out that there was no further investigation needed. It was fine. But for a moment, it would have caused a lot of issues because right now he was literally right behind Charles. So he was battling Charles for P3 because he overtook George around the same time that this penalty was being investigated. And at that point, it would have completely affected like where he ended up in the standings because he would have had definitely no chance at P3. George would have overtaken him in the race with a 5-second penalty. So it is good that there was no further investigation. And in this race around this time, we see a lot of team radios about team orders. So earlier in the race, we had a team order for Lance to let Fernando through. And then right around lap 40, we had Esteban be asked to let Ollie through because he was quicker. And then a couple laps after that, Gabby was asked to let Nico through. So a lot of team orders being thrown around, a lot of team cars close together, which is what teams kind of want to see. Unfortunately, it sucks, but like it means that both the drivers are pushing each other no matter where they are on the track.
Yeah.
Obviously, the McLarens are pushing each other at a different point than where the Saubers are pushing each other. But it is always a good sign to kind of have them around the same area. And then in lap 48, we see George really struggling with the tires. So much so, like, there were 2 laps left, and he was literally worried about making it to the end of the race.
That's crazy.
Because there was such bad, like, graining on it. Lando at this point was also about 1.3 seconds behind Charles. At this point, I just kind of knew that he wasn't going to catch him in time. But for like the last, I would say like 10 laps ever since Lando overtook George in lap 40, I was crossing my fingers. It didn't get anything close. I think 1.3 must have been the closest he got. He never quite got to DRS range in order to try to catch Charles. I think if he would have been slightly quicker and been able to get DRS range, he would have gotten him. So at that point, Charles was just kind of hanging on to P3. Oscar was far ahead. Max was 2 seconds, I think. He finished 2 seconds behind him, and then Charles finished a couple seconds after them. But Oscar won for now.
3 wins. Oscar has 3 wins.
He does. He's the only multi-race winner of the season.
And back-to-back race winners.
Back-to-back race winners. Do you want to explain why we're nervous about that, though?
We are slightly nervous. I've heard no more news. I have Chris Medlin's tweet notifications on. Love that guy. So Red Bull is basically going to the FAA. They have evidence. Christian Horner he's printed out the picture. They are going to the FAA to basically argue that Max was ahead at the apex in that lap 1 incident with Oscar. So I haven't experienced this situation before. So like, if this happens, is Max's 5-second penalty going to be revoked? And then technically he was only 2 seconds behind Oscar. Would that then mean he wins an Oscar P2?
Yeah, I don't know, because it's so crazy that if that was the case, because so much happened.
Yeah.
In the meantime.
What's going to happen with that? I don't know.
And then there was quite a bit of drama after the race. So after the race, initially, like whenever the radio message came out, Oscar was so happy. It was really cute. But whenever Max's radio message came out, like he seemed like upset, but he wasn't like angry. He was just like, oh, like it really sucks what happened. We'll get him next time, that kind of thing. Yeah. Like let's try for the next race. But then they were getting out of the cars, and during the like post-race interview, which it was with DC, who is part of the Red Bull family, him and Max interact quite a bit. They're friendly with each other outside of I mean, everywhere, normally. And Max goes up to do his interview questions, and DC's like, hey, can you tell me about this, like how the race was? And he goes, I'm going to keep it short. Thank you to the fans. Thanks for the car, Red Bull. See you all in Miami. Basically, he said that, and he just walked away. He didn't even wait for the second question.
How did DC react? I didn't get to see this.
Oh, well, we didn't see his face.
Oh,
so,
damn. I wish we could have.
He just walked away at that point, and we were all like, oh, wait, word?
Word. See you in Miami, Max.
Word.
See you in... I wish we would have seen DC's face, because DC's face during the 75 Live was
funny. It was just like, he was obviously very upset. Yeah. Rumor is that a conversation was had before he went to do his interview. There were pictures taken of him and MBM talking, and maybe something was said about, hey, you can't talk about disagreeing. You basically can't say that you disagree with the FIA's decision right now. Mm-hmm. In the media, you cannot say that. Otherwise, you can be fined championship points. You can get a race ban for it, for saying, this penalty I got, I don't agree with it. Something as simple as that literally could get you. So I think maybe he was reminded of that right before his interview by MBM. But he essentially... MBS. Oh my gosh.
MBM.
MBS. He essentially... Who's MBM?
I don't know. You said that all I could think was MGM Studios. Disney World. Which it's not even called that anymore, is it?
No, I don't think so. I don't know.
That's when I went.
Scared me.
I just got a Twitter notification.
But he pretty much has that energy throughout all of media. So even in his interviews with like different magazines and publications and all of that in the media pin, he was still very much so keeping that same energy. Like, I'm not allowed to talk about it. If I get talked about it, I can get a race ban. I'm not allowed to talk about it. Like, basically saying, like, I'm pissed off, but I can't say that I'm pissed off, so you're getting nothing from me. He carries that energy into the post-race press conference, which I haven't watched the full thing yet.
Carries it into the podium.
And he carries it into the podium. The podium... So the cool down room was a little awkward. He was talking with Charles when they were waiting for the interviews. And again, he seemed fine. So it must have been like maybe when Charles was up there is when that conversation was happening, because he was fine at first. But in the cool down room, like, he said no words. And you could tell Charles and Oscar were like, okay. Like, it was a little awkward.
What's that TikTok sound, I think from the Kardashians, where it's like, what is up with your sister? Like, what
you're like, oh my god, I know. No, I know. She scares. I know. No, that's literally them about Max. So the cool down room was a little awkward because of that. It cut the audio sooner than I would say was typical. Maybe I'm just stirring up drama at that point. But it felt a little quicker than normal when they cut the audio in the cool down room. And then on the podium, when they're about to spray each other, Max he simply doesn't.
He doesn't spray.
He doesn't spray it. He takes the champagne, or the not champagne, because they're in Saudi Arabia, so it was either rose water or Sprite.
Yeah.
He takes it and he just starts drinking it. No spraying the other ones. Charles, Oscar, and then the McLaren team member up there with Oscar all spray each other, and Max is just to the side. And legitimately, it looked like at one point I thought he left the podium. Like, I didn't see him for a second, and people are saying like he probably would have if he didn't have to take that picture.
Yeah.
But like at one point I literally was like looking for him. I was like, did he leave? But he was just really like off to the side, like as far off to the side as you could practically get, still being up there on the podium.
Oh my gosh.
So he's pissed. So I don't know. I mean, the picture that Red Bull had, and looking at the replays after the race again, people are saying maybe it could be that Max was ahead at the apex now. Although all of the commentators during the race, after watching the same exact reviews, said that Oscar was ahead of the apex. Yeah. Now changing the tune a little bit. So there's a chance that the FIA could change the tune. And again, we don't know what would happen in this situation.
Yeah, it's also already, let's see what time it is over
there. It's past midnight.
Yeah, it's past midnight. So
it's almost 1 a.m. there. So
are they still up and chatting? Is it? Okay, I feel like normally when things have been dismissed, Chris will be like, no, like, we're not talking about anymore. It's been dismissed.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
So we haven't even got like a dismissed tweet either. So,
but Oscar has done his posts now. So that's making me think like if he's confident enough to post about it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Maybe it's fine.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either, but
I'll pray on it.
Yeah, we'll have to pray on it. But final standings for the race is Oscar, Max, Charles, Lando, George, Kimmy in 6th. Again, he loves that spot.
Mm-hmm.
Lewis, Carlos, Alex, so double Williams points.
Double Williams.
And Isaac rounds out the top 10 for points. And then out of the points is Fernando, Liam, Ollie, Esteban, Nico, Lance, Jack, Gabby, Yuki and Pierre, both DNF. From it. So it did change some things in the Drivers' Championship. Oscar is leading the Drivers' Championship.
Points.
He's leading by 10 points. It's the first time an Australian has led the Drivers' Championship since Mark Webber.
Oh my God.
Back in 2010, I think. 2010?
Yeah.
I think so.
How does Australian celebrate? How does Australian celebrate? Like, immediately I was going to be like, ooh, time to burn couches, but that's not.
Shoeies, duh.
The whole country does a joint shoey.
Toddlers, I don't care.
Oh, sorry. The whole country is teen up.
They'll do a shoey with apple juice.
Yes.
Shoeys. So Oscar is leading the Drivers' Championship with 99 points. Lando is right behind him with 89 points, and then Max is in 3rd with 87. And then after that, you get George, Charles, Kimmy, Lewis, Alex, Esteban, Lance for the top 10 for the Drivers' Championship. Kimmy now
is impressing me massively.
Kimmy is doing fantastic. He is the highest scoring rookie by far. The next rookie down would be Ollie in 13th. He's looking really good right now.
He's still ahead of Lewis, and Lewis won the sprint race.
Yep.
Very impressive.
Fernando, Liam, Jack, and Gabby are the only 4 drivers with no points. So they need to get on that.
We're manifesting points for Gabby in Miami.
Oh, that'll be really nice and special.
Yeah, that'll be so special.
For the Constructors' Cup, McLaren is leading by a pretty good margin right now with 188 points. Mercedes is behind them with 111. Red Bull with 89. Ferrari with 75. And then we see a pretty hefty drop with Williams at 25. Haas is in 6th. And then Aston Martin, V-Carb, Alpine, and then Kick Sauber with 6 points, which technically Alpine and Sauber both have 6 points in 9th and 10th. Mm-hmm. So it was a good race, I would say. Yeah. A lot of good overtaking, more than typical at this track, I would say, because it's not one that we see a lot of overtakes on. But the ones that we saw were beautiful. Lando, fantastic. He went from P10 to P4, where, a lot of people in the media were, saying like, hey, like pressure's on, like this is happening, which he obviously, he was not in a very good state of mind after the crash yesterday. Mentally, I think he was fine physically for the most part, but mentally, but he seemed to kind of bounce back. And I think he's doing a lot better at like putting things into perspective and just like going to bed with it, waking up as a new chapter. So
who's his
therapist? And like, give me the number. But go ahead.
Did you see last night after qualifying Kim Illman's video being like,
oh my gosh,
Kim Illman made a video and he was like, guys, Lando's missing, we haven't seen him since this time. He's going on for like a good chunk of time, and then all of a sudden you see Lando whiz past right behind Kim, and Kim just goes, we found him. It was so funny.
Found him. Yeah.
And oh my god, just like, it was hilarious.
Yeah. No, I think McLaren and all looked pretty strong this weekend, other than the crash. I mean, because even in the free practices and qualifying Q1 and Q2, Lando was looking really quick. So I think if that wasn't for that crash, we would have had a McLaren 1-2, and it probably would have been an issue of like, okay, what strategy are we doing here?
Yeah. McLaren also tested upgrades.
Yeah, they tested upgrades and they didn't end up putting them on the car. So it is a little concerning going into Miami, because Miami's kind of a big deal for McLaren, for Lando in general. So
for me.
For us.
It's a big deal for us.
It's a really big deal for us. So we're going to...
It worked out so well last time.
It did. And it'll be fine. We're going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But before we talk too much more about how excited we are for Miami, let's do our champagne pops.
Who got driver of the day?
Problems. I believe it was Max.
Oh, word.
I believe so.
Who's your champagne pop?
My champagne pop there's so many people I want to give it to. Can I just spout off a couple people? I know I'm not supposed to, but
we make the rules.
We make the rules.
It's our own podcast.
It's our own podcast. Oscar obviously had a fantastic race.
Mm-hmm.
Lando went from P10 to P4. Mm-hmm. Carlos had a fantastic race. Williams in general had great teamwork. Champagne pop for that. I mean, Isaac had a really good race. He had a lot of good overtakes. He kept a lot of, big names behind him when they were knocking on his door. I think that's all. I think I feel good about those.
Okay, I love that for you.
What about yours?
I'm going to go ahead and give mine to Carlos.
Carlos, yeah.
First, I know he got a point because of disqualifications, but some points on the board, had a good race, kept it going, kept it running. No DNF, no crash, no. Carlos.
Yep, I'm happy. Love that. What about your problem? Champagne problems.
I hate to do it, but I'm going to give it to Pierre because he was having such a good weekend.
It hurts more, I think, because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to, again, a lot of options for this. I would say Pierre and Yuki, I think both, because Yuki, same reason for Pierre, but Yuki's just had a tough weekend in general as well. He crashed during, free practice, and then he obviously crashed during the race. So I think in general, Yuki had a rough weekend, and Pierre just being so strong, and then kind of coming from there.
Yeah.
Not great.
Anyway, Miami.
Guys, 9 days we're leaving. 10 days we're leaving, sorry.
Real quick, if you're still here and you're still listening, it's because you love us, first of all. But I'm going to spout off my quick... I'm also going to be I've been making like a little TikTok series of my own advice for going to the Grand Prix. Mm-hmm. I'm going to spout them off really, really quick because I have some good ones. Okay? Utilize the shuttles.
We're big fans of
the shuttles. Like, God, we're public transportation girls at heart, which sucks because we don't have a lot in our city. Yeah. 2, you're not allowed to bring aerosol cans of any sort. Sunscreen-wise, get travel bottles. Mm-hmm. Get multiple travel bottles. They're like less than $2 at any grocery store. We got some in Florida while we were there. Bring one a day. We got 3. I got way too many. I still have some from last year.
I know, me too.
Well, I hope they're not expired.
Well, we'll figure that out.
Yeah. Okay. 3. My face got so dry last year. Get a good moisturizer, or like just make sure you're moisturizing at night. Okay, my face was so dry. 4, make sure, this is one of my biggest ones. I should have said it first. Have your credit card, debit card, cards, race tickets, everything in your Apple Wallet. So much easier to get in. And first of all, you can pay Apple Pay. You're not dinging around in your purse, in your bag. You don't have to worry about losing it. It's in there. Apple Pay.
Side point: bring a portable charger.
Especially
if you're not, like, take your card still.
Yeah, no.
But if you're only putting it on your phone, definitely bring a portable charger.
Yeah, for sure. No, bring all your cards and your wallet and ID and stuff like that. But it's just so much easier not to be like, oh shoot, I took my wallet earlier. Like, where is it?
I know, stressed about it. Yeah, like falling out, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Those are my big ones. Stay hydrated.
You can take a water bottle in. It has to be empty. It has to be less than 32 ounces. Technically, it's not supposed to be one of like a hydro flask.
It needs to be soft-sided,
allegedly. But you
go at your own discretion. If you can buy water there and then keep refilling it throughout the day. Yes. Porta potty situation, be prepared for that.
Yeah, the porta potties, they are porta potties. They're not. They do a pretty good job of keeping them cleaner. They did last year, at least near our grandstands. But they're still porta potties at the end of the day. So
they smell bad at the end of the day.
They do smell bad.
And walk fast.
Yes. And they're utilize the water refill stations. Yeah, I will say, Coda had water refill stations and Miami had water refill stations. They were completely different situations where Miami did a really fantastic job of it. It's still warm water though. So if you want cold water, the water bottles aren't super expensive there actually.
No,
it was only a couple dollars, which some of the races we went to, the tickets were kind of spiked there. Yeah. But for the most part, if you don't want to bring a water bottle, what I did last year is I'd buy one water bottle at the beginning of the day of cold water, and then I would just refill that same plastic water bottle throughout the day.
Yeah. If you want to give it a shot, you could ask a bartender for a glass of ice. I don't know how they're going to respond to that.
Yeah. It depends. The bartender,
it depends. It's going to depend. You could even be like, I'll pay, like, if you really need it. Like, we never did that, but, like, you could.
Yeah.
We did it at one of the IndyCar races. Mm-hmm. But just throwing those out there. Be smart, be safe. If you go out, make sure you have a buddy.
Yeah, have your buddy.
It's pretty crazy, the club scene down there. We loved it.
We loved it.
I mean, if you've listened to us, you know.
Do your research, though, before you go somewhere.
I looked on Reddit.
Look on Reddit. Look on TikTok. Look on it, social media. Just make sure you're safe wherever you're going.
Yeah, for sure.
And
if you're going, tell us.
Yeah, let us know. Which
want to meet friends.
We have a full episode that comes out before then. So our next episode that comes out next week, we have special guests on.
We said that in that episode, but we are pre-filming it because I'm out of town next weekend. So like if anything crazy happens and we don't talk about it, that is why.
Yes, so if you want to hear our opinion on if something crazy happens the next week, go to TikTok.
Yeah, go to TikTok.
Because we'll post it there. But in the episode next week, we have some guests on. We get to interview them, talk about their story, talk about how they got into motorsport, all of that. And then we also talk a little bit more about our Miami predictions in that episode.
Yeah, we do.
So make sure you go check that out next week. And
leave a comment and guess who you think we're bringing on this.
Yeah, who do you all think is going to be the guest? I think you probably could guess pretty easily.
Pretty easily.
Not going to lie. Other than that, thanks for listening.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.